Question 1. An international consortium developing a new orbital debris mitigation strategy is navigating the complexities of cross-cultural collaboration and diverse national regulatory frameworks. The team comprises engineers from Japan, policy analysts from Germany, and legal experts from Brazil. During a critical decision-making meeting regarding the prioritization of mitigation technologies, a proposal for a novel, but unproven, active debris removal system is met with strong skepticism by the Japanese contingent, citing a cultural preference for incremental, well-tested solutions. Simultaneously, the German participants express concerns about the regulatory uncertainties and potential liability under existing international space law, while the Brazilian team emphasizes the need for cost-effectiveness and equitable access to space. Which of the following best describes the primary challenge arising from human and cultural factors that the consortium must address to effectively transition to and implement ISO 31000-2018 principles? Option A. Implementing a purely data-driven risk assessment methodology that overrides subjective cultural influences and personal biases in decision-making. Option B. Ensuring all team members possess identical technical expertise in orbital mechanics and space law to eliminate knowledge gaps that could impede risk assessment. Option C. Standardizing communication protocols to eliminate any potential for misinterpretation, irrespective of the underlying cultural nuances in communication styles. Option D. Reconciling differing national and professional cultural norms regarding risk appetite, decision-making processes, and the acceptance of uncertainty to foster a shared understanding and consistent application of risk criteria. Correct answer is D. Reconciling differing national and professional cultural norms regarding risk appetite, decision-making processes, and the acceptance of uncertainty to foster a shared understanding and consistent application of risk criteria. Explanation. The transition to ISO 31000-2018 emphasizes a more integrated and principle-based approach to risk management. Acknowledging human and cultural factors is paramount because these elements significantly influence the effectiveness of any risk management framework. Human factors, such as cognitive biases, decision-making processes, and the perception of risk, can lead to either underestimation or overestimation of potential threats and opportunities. Cultural factors, encompassing organizational values, communication styles, attitudes towards risk-taking, and the established norms of behavior, shape how risks are identified, analyzed, evaluated, treated, and communicated. For instance, a culture that discourages open reporting of errors or near misses will likely have a flawed risk identification process, as critical information may be withheld. Conversely, a culture that fosters psychological safety and encourages constructive challenge can significantly enhance the robustness of risk management. Therefore, understanding and proactively addressing these influences is not merely an add-on, but a fundamental prerequisite for successful risk management implementation, aligning with the standard's focus on embedding risk management into an organization's governance and decision-making processes. This includes considering how leadership behavior, employee engagement, and the overall organizational climate impact the application of risk management principles and practices. Question 2. Following a comprehensive risk assessment for a new pharmaceutical product launch, a company's risk management team has analyzed potential market penetration risks. The established risk criteria for market acceptance are a maximum acceptable probability of 20% for failure to meet initial sales targets within the first year, and a maximum acceptable impact of a 15% revenue shortfall. The risk analysis for market penetration indicates a probability of 25% for failure to meet initial sales targets and an estimated revenue shortfall of 18%. Considering the principles of ISO 31000-2018, how should the organization proceed with this specific risk? Option A. The identified market penetration risk exceeds the established risk criteria, necessitating immediate development and implementation of risk treatment measures. Option B. The identified market penetration risk is within acceptable limits because the probability of failure is only slightly higher than the criterion. Option C. The identified market penetration risk requires further analysis to refine the probability and impact estimates before any decision on treatment can be made. Option D. The identified market penetration risk can be accepted without further action, as the revenue shortfall is only marginally above the defined threshold. The correct answer is A. The identified market penetration risk exceeds the established risk criteria, necessitating immediate development and implementation of risk treatment measures. Explanation. The core principle when comparing risk analysis results with risk criteria in ISO 31000-2018 is to determine whether the identified risks, after analysis, exceed or fall within the organization's established tolerance levels. Risk criteria are the terms of reference against which the significance of a risk is evaluated. These criteria are typically defined by the organization, considering its objectives, legal and regulatory requirements, and stakeholder expectations. When risk analysis is performed, the resulting risk levels are then compared to these predefined criteria. If a risk's analyzed level is higher than the acceptable risk criterion, it indicates that the risk is significant and requires treatment. Conversely, if the analyzed risk level is below or at the criterion, it may be accepted without further treatment or require only monitoring. This comparison is a critical step in the decision-making process for risk treatment and informs whether further action is necessary to manage the risk effectively, aligning with the organization's overall risk appetite and management framework. The transition to ISO 31000-2018 emphasizes a more integrated approach, ensuring that risk criteria are consistently applied across all levels and functions of the organization to facilitate informed decision-making and improve risk management effectiveness. Question 3. Consider a global logistics company, Trans Global Freight, that has been operating under a well-established but internal risk management system. They are now undertaking a transition to align with ISO 31000-2018. During the initial assessment phase of this transition, it becomes apparent that their current risk register lacks a consistent methodology for risk scoring across different operational units, leading to varied interpretations of risk severity and priority. Furthermore, the integration of risk management into strategic decision-making processes is ad hoc and heavily reliant on individual executive judgment rather than a standardized framework, which fundamental characteristic of a structured and comprehensive risk management approach, as emphasized by ISO 31000-2018, is most critically underdeveloped at Trans Global Freight, hindering their ability to achieve consistent and comparable results during this transition. Option A. Continuous improvement of the risk management framework. Option B. Effective communication and consultation with stakeholders. Option C. Systematic and logical application of risk management principles and processes. Option D. Proactive identification and assessment of all potential risks. The correct answer is C. Systematic and logical application of risk management principles and processes. Explanation. The transition from an older risk management framework to ISO 31000-2018 necessitates a comprehensive review and potential restructuring of existing risk management processes. A key aspect of this transition is ensuring that the organization's risk management framework aligns with the principles, framework, and process outlined in the 2018 standard. This involves evaluating the current governance, integration, design, and implementation of risk management activities. The standard emphasizes that risk management should be integrated into all organizational activities, including decision-making, strategic planning, and operational execution. A structured and comprehensive approach is vital for achieving consistent and comparable results across different departments and over time. This means establishing clear roles and responsibilities, documented procedures, and regular performance monitoring. When an organization adopts ISO 31000-2018, it commits to a systematic methodology for identifying, analyzing, evaluating, treating, monitoring, and communicating risks. This systematic approach, when applied consistently, ensures that all significant risks are addressed in a uniform manner, facilitating benchmarking and continuous improvement. Without this structured and comprehensive application, the benefits of adopting the standard, such as enhanced decision-making and improved resilience, may not be fully realized, leading to fragmented or ineffective risk management practices. Question 4. Assessment of an organization's risk management framework reveals a strong adherence to the principles outlined in ISO 31000-2018. However, the organization also utilizes the COSO ERM framework for detailed implementation and reporting. Considering the foundational nature of ISO 31000-2018 and its stated intent regarding compatibility with other standards. How does the integration of COSO ERM best complement the ISO 31000-2018 approach within this context? Option A. COSO ERM provides a more granular, structured implementation blueprint that aligns with and operationalizes the high-level principles and generic guidelines of ISO 31000-2018, enhancing its practical application across an enterprise. Option B. The primary benefit of integrating COSO ERM with ISO 31000-2018 is to satisfy specific regulatory compliance requirements that are explicitly detailed in the ISO standard itself. Option C. ISO 31000-2018 supersedes COSO ERM by offering a more comprehensive and updated set of principles, making the continued use of COSO ERM redundant for effective risk management. Option D. ISO 31000-2018 and COSO ERM are fundamentally incompatible, requiring organizations to choose one framework exclusively to avoid conflicting risk management methodologies. Correct answer is A. COSO ERM provides a more granular, structured implementation blueprint that aligns with and operationalizes the high-level principles and generic guidelines of ISO 31000-2018, enhancing its practical application across an enterprise. Explanation: the transition to ISO 31000-2018 emphasizes a more integrated approach to risk management, recognizing its pervasive nature across an organization and its alignment with strategic objectives. ISO 31000-2018 explicitly states its purpose is to provide principles and generic guidelines on risk management, applicable to any public, private, or community organization. It is designed to be compatible with and complementary to other management system standards, such as ISO 9001, Quality Management, and ISO 14001, Environmental Management. The standard highlights that risk management should be an integral part of organizational governance and decision-making, not a standalone activity. When considering the relationship with other frameworks, ISO 31000-2018 promotes a holistic view. For instance, while COSO ERM Enterprise Risk Management provides a more detailed framework for implementation, ISO 31000-2018 offers the overarching principles and guidelines that can be adapted to suit specific organizational contexts and existing frameworks. The standard does not mandate specific methodologies, but encourages flexibility in their application, provided they align with the principles. Therefore, the core value proposition of ISO 31000-2018 in its relationship with other standards is its ability to serve as a foundational, universally applicable set of principles that enhance the effectiveness of other risk-related initiatives and management systems. It fosters a culture where risk is considered in all activities, from strategic planning to day-to-day operations, thereby improving the likelihood of achieving objectives. Question 5. Following the transition to ISO 31000-2018, a global logistics firm, Swift Flow Couriers, is assessing the efficacy of its updated risk management framework, particularly its monitoring and review mechanisms. They have observed that while risk registers are being updated quarterly, the underlying assumptions driving the risk assessments are rarely re-evaluated. Furthermore, the post-incident reviews, a key component of their monitoring, are often conducted in isolation from the broader risk treatment plans. Considering the principles outlined in ISO 31000-2018 for monitoring and review, which of the following actions would most effectively enhance Swift Flow Couriers' risk management process by ensuring a more integrated and dynamic assessment of risks and controls? Option A. Integrating the re-evaluation of risk assessment assumptions into the quarterly risk register updates and mandating that post-incident review findings directly inform the review of existing risk treatments and the development of new ones. Option B. Establishing a dedicated risk management committee that meets semi-annually to discuss risk appetite statements and high-level strategic risks, bypassing granular operational risk monitoring. Option C. Conducting an annual comprehensive audit of the risk management framework, focusing solely on compliance with documented procedures and regulatory requirements. Option D. Increasing the frequency of risk register updates to monthly, without altering the process for reviewing underlying assumptions or linking incident reviews to treatment plans. Correct answer is A. integrating the re-evaluation of risk assessment assumptions into the quarterly risk register updates, and mandating that post-incident review findings directly inform the review of existing risk treatments and the development of new ones. Explanation: the transition to ISO 31000-2018 emphasizes a more integrated and dynamic approach to risk management, particularly in its monitoring and review processes. Clause 9 of the standard, Monitoring, Review and Improvement, mandates that an organization's risk management framework and its application are continually monitored and reviewed. This involves checking for effectiveness, efficiency, and alignment with the organization's objectives and changing context. The review process should not be a static, periodic event, but an ongoing activity that informs improvements. It requires examining whether the risk management framework is achieving its intended outcomes, and if the risk management processes are being applied consistently and appropriately. Feedback from this monitoring and review is crucial for identifying opportunities to enhance the overall risk management system, including its design, implementation, and performance. This continuous improvement cycle is fundamental to ensuring that risk management remains relevant and valuable in a dynamic environment, supporting informed decision-making and the achievement of strategic goals. Effective monitoring and review activities contribute to the overall resilience and adaptability of the organization by ensuring that risks are understood, managed, and that the management processes themselves are subject to scrutiny and enhancement. Question 6. Considering the principles of establishing a risk management framework as outlined in ISO 31000-2018, which of the following best characterizes the critical initial steps an organization must undertake to ensure effective risk management integration, particularly when transitioning from an informal to a formalized approach? Option A. Clearly defining roles and responsibilities for risk management across all organizational levels and securing dedicated resources, including personnel and budget, to support these functions. Option B. Developing a detailed risk register that captures all identified risks, irrespective of the organizational structure or resource availability. Option C. Appointing a single individual to oversee all risk management activities and providing them with a broad mandate without specifying resource allocation. Option D. Conducting a comprehensive risk assessment of all existing operational processes before allocating any resources or defining specific roles. The correct answer is A. Clearly defining roles and responsibilities for risk management across all organizational levels and securing dedicated resources, including personnel and budget, to support these functions. Explanation: ISO 31000-2018, in its guidance on establishing the framework for managing risk, emphasizes the critical role of defining clear responsibilities and ensuring adequate resources. This involves identifying who is accountable for risk management activities at various levels within an organization and what resources, including human, financial, and technological, are necessary for effective implementation. The standard promotes a structured approach where leadership commitment is paramount in allocating these resources and defining roles, such as those of the risk management function or specific risk owners. This ensures that risk management is integrated into the organization's governance and operations, rather than being a standalone activity. The transition to the 2018 version further stresses the importance of aligning risk management with the organization's objectives and the external context, necessitating a dynamic allocation of resources and a clear assignment of responsibilities that can adapt to changing circumstances and regulatory landscapes, such as those influenced by evolving data privacy laws or emerging cybersecurity threats. The effectiveness of the framework hinges on the clarity and commitment associated with these foundational elements. Question 7. An established manufacturing firm, currently operating under a risk management system derived from a 2001 guideline, is undertaking a transition to ISO 31000-2018. A preliminary internal review highlights that while the firm has a robust process for identifying operational hazards and implementing safety controls, its approach to strategic risks and the integration of risk management into business planning is less formalized. The review also notes that risk appetite and tolerance are not explicitly defined or communicated, and the board's direct involvement in overseeing risk management activities is limited to periodic compliance checks. Considering the principles and framework outlined in ISO 2018. Which of the following represents the most significant gap in the firm's current practices relative to the updated standards requirements? Option A. The absence of formalized processes for risk management and business planning is a minor issue, as operational safety is the primary concern for a manufacturing entity. Option B. Insufficient integration of risk management into strategic decision-making and a lack of clearly articulated risk appetite and tolerance, coupled with limited board-level oversight of risk management. Option C. The reliance on a 2001 guideline indicates a well-established process that may only require minor procedural updates to align with ISO 31000-2018. Option D. The firm's focus on operational hazards, which is a fundamental aspect of risk management, suggests a strong foundation that minimizes the need for significant changes. The correct answer is B. Insufficient integration of risk management into strategic decision-making and a lack of clearly articulated risk appetite and tolerance, coupled with limited board-level oversight of risk management. Explanation: the transition from an older risk management framework to ISO 31000-2018 necessitates a thorough assessment of existing practices against the revised standards principles, framework, and processes. ISO 31000-2018 emphasizes integration, leadership commitment, and a more dynamic approach to risk management. A key aspect of identifying gaps involves evaluating how current risk management activities align with the standard's core tenets, such as the holistic nature of risk, the importance of context, and the continuous improvement cycle. For instance, if an organization's current approach primarily focuses on compliance-driven risk assessment and lacks a strong emphasis on strategic alignment or stakeholder engagement, this represents a significant gap. Standards framework, which includes establishing the organizational context, risk assessment, risk treatment, and monitoring and review, must be comprehensively examined. A gap analysis should scrutinize whether the existing risk management policy and objectives are clearly defined and communicated, if the roles and responsibilities for risk management are adequately established and understood across all levels, and if the methods used for identifying, analyzing, and evaluating risks are sufficiently robust and aligned with the organization's specific context and objectives. Furthermore, the extent to which risk management is embedded into decision-making processes, the effectiveness of communication and consultation strategies, and the mechanisms for reporting and reviewing risk management performance are critical areas for gap identification. The transition requires not just procedural adjustments, but a cultural shift towards proactive risk management, making the assessment of leadership commitment and the integration of risk management into organizational culture a paramount concern when identifying discrepancies between current practices and the ISO 31000-2018 requirements. Question 8. When an organization is undertaking the transition to the ISO 31000-2018 framework and aiming to embed the principle of inclusive risk management by ensuring appropriate and timely stakeholder involvement, what is the most critical factor in determining the specific methods and timing of engagement for various stakeholder groups concerning a newly identified strategic risk impacting global supply chains? Option A. The nature and impact of the strategic risk, coupled with the stakeholder's ability to influence or be influenced by the risk and its treatment. Option B. The historical frequency of past interactions with specific stakeholder groups during previous risk management exercises. Option C. The perceived seniority of the stakeholder within the organization's hierarchy and their direct reporting lines. Option D. The availability of pre-existing communication channels and standardized reporting templates for all identified stakeholders. The correct answer is A. The nature and impact of the strategic risk, coupled with the stakeholder's ability to influence or be influenced by the risk and its treatment. Explanation: the transition to ISO 31000-2018 emphasizes an integrated and inclusive approach to risk management. A core principle is the appropriate and timely involvement of stakeholders to ensure their knowledge, views, and perceptions are considered throughout the risk management process. This inclusivity is not merely about communication, but about actively seeking and incorporating diverse perspectives to enhance the effectiveness and acceptance of risk treatments and decisions. When transitioning, an organization must identify all relevant stakeholders, including internal groups like employees at various levels and external parties such as regulators, suppliers, customers, and community representatives. The timeliness of their involvement is crucial. Engaging them too late can lead to resistance or overlooked critical information. The process should involve mechanisms for consultation, feedback, and participation, tailored to the nature of the risk and the stakeholder group. For instance, a new operational risk might require input from frontline staff and safety regulators, while a strategic risk might involve shareholders and market analysts. The goal is to build a shared understanding of risks and to foster a sense of ownership over the risk management framework. This comprehensive engagement contributes to better risk identification, more robust analysis, and more appropriate and effective risk responses, ultimately supporting the achievement of organizational objectives. Question 9. Considering the principles outlined in ISO 31000-2018 for risk management, which approach to risk identification would most effectively uncover both established and emergent threats within a dynamic regulatory landscape, such as evolving data privacy laws like GDPR or CCPA, while also ensuring comprehensive coverage of known operational vulnerabilities? Option A. Conducting periodic expert interviews with senior management, focusing only on strategic risks and disregarding operational or compliance-related risks. Option B. A structured workshop utilizing a hybrid methodology that combines facilitated brainstorming with a review of industry-specific incident databases and a predefined checklist of regulatory compliance failure modes. Option C. Relying solely on historical incident reports and internal audit findings to identify risks, assuming that past patterns will accurately predict future threats. Option D. Implementing a continuous environmental scanning process that focuses exclusively on monitoring global geopolitical events and their potential downstream impacts on the organization. The correct answer is B. A structured workshop utilizing a hybrid methodology that combines facilitated brainstorming with a review of industry-specific incident databases and a predefined checklist of regulatory compliance failure modes. Explanation: ISO 31000-2018 emphasizes a systematic and iterative process for risk management. Identifying risks is a crucial step, and the standard suggests various techniques. While brainstorming is effective for generating a broad range of potential risks, it can sometimes lead to a diffusion of focus or overlook subtle but significant threats. Historical data analysis is valuable for identifying recurring issues and trends, but it may not capture novel or emerging risks that have not occurred previously. Checklists, derived from past experiences or industry best practices, are useful for ensuring that common risks are not missed. However, their rigid nature might limit the discovery of unique risks specific to an organization's current context or evolving environment. A robust risk identification process often involves a combination of these techniques, tailored to the specific context of the organization. The effectiveness of any technique is also influenced by the skill of the facilitator, the participation of relevant stakeholders, and the clarity of the objectives. The transition to ISO 31000-2018 necessitates an understanding of how these techniques align with the updated principles and guidelines, particularly concerning the integration of risk management into organizational governance and decision-making. The standard encourages a proactive approach, moving beyond mere compliance to embedding risk awareness throughout the organization. Question 10. Considering the principles of ISO 31000-2018, which of the following approaches to risk identification would most effectively facilitate the transition for an organization that has historically relied on a singular, top-down hazard assessment method for its operational risks? Option A. Implementing a multidisciplinary workshop series engaging personnel from various functional areas to brainstorm potential risks, supplemented by a review of industry-specific incident databases and emerging regulatory changes. Option B. Delegating the responsibility for identifying new risks solely to the internal audit department, tasking them with periodic reviews of existing risk registers. Option C. Focusing exclusively on the financial implications of identified risks, assuming that all other risk types will be indirectly captured through economic impacts. Option D. Expanding the existing top-down hazard assessment by incorporating a broader range of potential impact categories without altering the primary data collection methodology. The correct answer is A. Implementing a multidisciplinary workshop series engaging personnel from various functional areas to brainstorm potential risks, supplemented by a review of industry-specific incident databases and emerging regulatory changes. Explanation: ISO 31000, 2018, in its updated framework for risk management, emphasizes a structured and iterative process. The transition to this standard involves a critical review of existing risk management practices to align with its principles and guidelines. Risk identification, a foundational element, is the process of finding, recognizing, and describing risks. It involves identifying the sources of risk, their potential consequences, and the events that could cause them. The standard promotes a comprehensive approach, encouraging the consideration of both internal and external factors that could affect the achievement of objectives. This includes examining the context of the organization, its activities, and its environment. Effective risk identification is not a one-time event, but an ongoing activity integrated into the organization's processes. The standard advocates for diverse methods and techniques to ensure that a wide range of potential risks are uncovered. This proactive approach is crucial for developing appropriate risk responses and ultimately enhancing the organization's resilience and ability to achieve its goals. The transition necessitates ensuring that the organization's risk identification processes are robust enough to capture emerging risks and adapt to changing circumstances, as outlined in the standard's emphasis on the dynamic nature of risk. Question 11. Consider a global technology firm, Innovatech Solutions, that is undergoing a transition to align its practices with ISO 31000, 2018. The firm's executive leadership is debating how to best embed risk management into its core business functions to ensure it is an integral part of all organizational activities. They are seeking a strategy that moves beyond a compliance-focused, siloed approach. Which of the following approaches most effectively demonstrates the principle of risk management being an integral part of all organizational activities within Innovatech Solutions? Option A. Implementing a risk register that is updated quarterly by departmental heads, with a focus on identifying and documenting potential threats to operational continuity. Option B. Establishing a dedicated risk management department that provides oversight and reporting to all business units, ensuring risk policies are disseminated and followed. Option C. Conducting annual risk assessment workshops with senior management to identify key risks and develop mitigation plans for the upcoming fiscal year. Option D. Developing a comprehensive risk management framework that is explicitly linked to the organization's strategic objectives, performance indicators, and decision-making processes at all levels. The correct answer is B. Establishing a dedicated risk management department that provides oversight and reporting to all business units, ensuring risk policies are disseminated and followed. Explanation: the core principle of ISO 31000, 2018 regarding the integration of risk management into organizational activities means that risk management should not be a standalone function, but rather embedded within all aspects of an organization's operations, decision-making processes, and governance structures. This implies that risk considerations are part of strategic planning, operational execution, performance monitoring, and even the development of new products or services. When risk management is truly integrated, it influences how objectives are set, how strategies are formulated, and how day-to-day activities are conducted. This holistic approach ensures that risk is considered proactively rather than reactively, and that all personnel at all levels are aware of and contribute to managing risks relevant to their roles and the organization's overall success. It fosters a risk-aware culture where informed decisions are made, taking into account potential opportunities and threats. This integration is crucial for achieving the organization's objectives and enhancing its resilience and performance. Question 12. Consider a multinational technology firm, Innovatech Solutions, that has recently experienced a significant shift in its operational landscape due to the implementation of a new global cybersecurity directive from the International Standards Organization, ISO, and a concurrent substantial increase in the frequency of sophisticated ransomware attacks targeting its cloud infrastructure. Which of the following best exemplifies the dynamic, iterative, and responsive nature of risk management as espoused by ISO 31000, 2018 in this context? Option A. Innovatech Solutions relies on historical risk data from the previous 5 years to update its risk register, making minor adjustments to existing risk treatments without re-evaluating the overall effectiveness or considering the impact of the new directive and attack patterns. Option B. Innovatech Solutions conducts a one-time risk assessment focused solely on the new cybersecurity directive, documenting the identified risks and assigning responsibility for mitigation without further review or integration into the broader risk management process. Option C. Innovatech Solutions implements a new risk management software solution that automatically generates risk reports based on predefined templates, assuming this automated process will adequately address the evolving risk landscape. Option D. Innovatech Solutions proactively revises its entire risk management framework, including the risk appetite statement and the criteria for risk evaluation, to reflect the new regulatory requirements and the heightened threat environment, subsequently updating its risk register and treatment plans based on this revised foundation. The correct answer is D. Innovatech Solutions proactively revises its entire risk management framework, including the risk appetite statement and the criteria for risk evaluation, to reflect the new regulatory requirements and the heightened threat environment, subsequently updating its risk register and treatment plans based on this revised foundation. Explanation: the principle that risk management is dynamic, iterative, and responsive to change is a core tenet of ISO 31000-2018. This means that the risk management process is not a one-time event, but an ongoing activity that adapts to evolving internal and external contexts. When an organization experiences significant shifts, such as a major regulatory update like the GDPR impact on data privacy, or a substantial change in market conditions, the risk management framework must be reevaluated and adjusted. This involves revisiting the scope, objectives, and even the fundamental assumptions underpinning the risk assessment and treatment processes. The iterative nature implies that the outcomes of one cycle of risk management inform and refine subsequent cycles. Responsiveness to change is crucial. As new risks emerge or existing risks change in likelihood or consequence due to external factors or internal decisions, the risk management system must be agile enough to identify, analyze, and respond effectively. This continuous adaptation ensures that the organization's risk profile remains relevant and that risk treatments continue to be effective in achieving the organization's objectives. The transition to ISO 31000-2018 emphasizes this dynamic aspect by promoting a more integrated and embedded approach to risk management within an organization's governance and strategic planning. Question 13. Following a comprehensive internal audit of its risk management framework, a global logistics company, Swift Ship Logistics, identified several critical control failures in its supply chain risk mitigation strategies. The audit report specifically noted that the existing framework's reliance on historical data for predicting disruption severity was insufficient to account for the increasing frequency of extreme weather events, a trend corroborated by recent meteorological analyses and insurance industry reports. The company's senior leadership is now tasked with determining the most appropriate course of action to enhance the framework's adaptability and predictive accuracy in line with ISO 31000-2018 principles for continual improvement. Which of the following actions would most effectively address the identified shortcomings and foster the continual improvement of Swift Ship Logistics risk management framework? Option A. Mandate that all supply chain partners provide more granular data on their own risk mitigation efforts, without a concurrent adjustment to Swift Ship's internal risk identification or evaluation processes. Option B. Revise the risk assessment methodology to incorporate forward-looking scenario planning and predictive analytics, focusing on the impact of climate change on logistical routes, and subsequently update risk treatment plans and communication protocols based on these revised assessments. Option C. Develop a comprehensive risk management policy document that outlines general principles but does not specify any changes to the operational risk assessment or treatment processes. Option D. Increase the frequency of internal risk reviews from an annual to a semi-annual basis without altering the underlying risk assessment tools or methodologies employed. The correct answer is B. Revise the risk assessment methodology to incorporate forward-looking scenario planning and predictive analytics, focusing on the impact of climate change on logistical routes, and subsequently update risk treatment plans and communication protocols based on these revised assessments. Explanation: ISO 31000-2018 emphasizes the dynamic nature of risk management, requiring a robust framework that is subject to continual improvement. This improvement is driven by the outcomes of monitoring and review processes, which are essential for ensuring the framework's ongoing effectiveness, relevance, and alignment with the organization's objectives and context. When monitoring and review activities reveal that the framework's design or implementation is not adequately addressing emerging risks, failing to achieve intended risk management outcomes, or is becoming inefficient, the organization must initiate changes. These changes are not arbitrary. They are informed by the specific findings of the review. For instance, if a review highlights a consistent failure to identify a particular type of operational risk, the improvement might involve enhancing the methods for risk identification, such as introducing new scenario analysis techniques or improving the consultation process with frontline staff. Conversely, if the review indicates that the risk appetite statement is too vague to guide decision-making effectively, the improvement would focus on refining the statement for greater clarity and measurability. The standard mandates that the framework itself, including its policies, processes, and integration into organizational activities, should be adapted based on these insights. This iterative cycle of monitoring, review, and adaptation is fundamental to maintaining a resilient and effective risk management system that can respond to changes in internal and external environments, thereby supporting the achievement of organizational goals. Question 14. A multinational logistics firm, Swift Ship Global, operating in regions with fluctuating geopolitical stability, identifies a significant risk of supply chain disruption due to sudden trade embargoes imposed by governments. This risk has a high potential impact on their ability to deliver goods and a moderate to high likelihood of occurrence within the next fiscal year, as indicated by geopolitical intelligence reports and historical data. Swift Ship Global's board is deliberating on the most appropriate risk treatment strategy for this identified threat, considering the potential financial implications, operational capacity, and strategic objectives of the company. Which risk treatment approach would most effectively align with the principles of ISO 31000-2018 for this specific scenario? Option A. Securing comprehensive insurance policies that cover losses arising from trade embargoes. Option B. Allocating contingency funds to absorb the financial impact of any disruptions. Option C. Actively lobbying governments to prevent the imposition of trade embargoes. Option D. Implementing diversified sourcing strategies and establishing alternative transportation routes to minimize reliance on potentially affected corridors. Correct answer is D. Implementing diversified sourcing strategies and establishing alternative transportation routes to minimize reliance on potentially affected corridors. Explanation: the transition to ISO 31000-2018 emphasizes a more integrated and principles-based approach to risk management, moving away from prescriptive requirements. When considering risk treatment options, the standard guides organizations to select options that are effective, efficient, and appropriate to the context. The selection process involves evaluating the potential benefits against the costs and resources required. For a risk that is deemed to have a significant potential impact on an organization's objectives, and where the likelihood of occurrence is also considerable, a strategy that aims to eliminate or substantially reduce the risk is often the most prudent. This involves taking actions that prevent the risk from materializing or, if it does, minimizing its consequences to a level that is no longer a threat to achieving objectives. This approach directly addresses the core of risk management, protecting and creating value. Other options, such as transferring the risk e.g., through insurance, might mitigate the financial impact but do not eliminate the operational disruption. Reducing the risk implies a lesser degree of intervention than elimination. Accepting the risk means acknowledging it without implementing specific controls, which is generally unsuitable for high-impact, high-likelihood risks. Therefore, a strategy that seeks to prevent the risk from occurring or to reduce its impact to an acceptable level through direct intervention is the most aligned with robust risk treatment for significant threats. Question 15. Consider a multinational logistics company, Global Freight Solutions, which is undergoing a transition to align its risk management practices with ISO 31000-2018. The company is focusing on enhancing its risk identification process for potential disruptions in its supply chain. During a workshop session aimed at identifying events that could impact the timely delivery of goods, participants are discussing scenarios related to geopolitical instability in a key transit region. Which of the following approaches best exemplifies the ISO 2018 emphasis on identifying potential events and their causes within this context. Option A. Focusing only on direct causes of delivery delays, such as vehicle breakdowns or customs issues, and not exploring the broader systemic or cascading effects that might arise from geopolitical shifts. Option B. Systematically mapping the entire supply chain network, identifying critical nodes and potential failure points, and then exploring the underlying socio-political, economic, and environmental factors that could trigger disruptions at those specific points. Option C. Compiling a list of historical incidents that have caused delivery delays in similar regions, and assuming these will be the primary risks to manage going forward. Option D. Relying solely on expert opinions from senior management regarding potential geopolitical events, without conducting a detailed analysis of contributing factors or broader contextual influences. The correct answer is B. Systematically mapping the entire supply chain network, identifying critical nodes and potential failure points, and then exploring the underlying socio-political, economic, and environmental factors that could trigger disruptions at those specific points. Explanation: the transition to ISO 31000-2018 from previous versions emphasizes a more integrated and principles-based approach to risk management. Clause 5.3 of the standard, which deals with principles, highlights that risk management should be an integral part of all organizational activities. Clause 5.4 framework details the components necessary for effective risk management, including commitment and leadership integration, design, and improvement. Clause 5.5 process outlines the systematic steps of risk assessment, communication and consultation, scope, context and criteria, risk assessment, risk identification, risk analysis, risk evaluation, and risk treatment. When identifying potential events and their causes, the focus shifts from merely listing threats and opportunities to understanding the underlying drivers and contributing factors that could lead to those events occurring. This involves a comprehensive analysis of the organization's internal and external context, as defined in Clause 5.2. The identification process should be iterative and consider a wide range of potential events, including those that are unlikely but could have significant consequences. Understanding the root causes and contributing factors is crucial for developing effective risk treatments and ensuring that the risk management framework is robust and adaptable. This proactive approach, driven by a thorough understanding of the context and potential deviations from intended outcomes, is a hallmark of the ISO 31000-2018 standard. Question 16. When an established organization is undertaking a transition to align its existing risk management practices with the principles and guidelines of ISO 31000-2018, which of the following foundational elements is most critical for ensuring the successful integration of the new framework into the organization's governance and strategic operations? Option A. Establishing a comprehensive risk management framework that is demonstrably integrated with the organization's overall governance structure and strategic decision-making processes. Option B. Conducting extensive training programs for all employees on the basic principles of risk identification and reporting, without necessarily linking these to strategic objectives. Option C. Developing a detailed risk register that categorizes all identified risks according to their potential impact and likelihood, with specific mitigation plans for each. Option D. Implementing a sophisticated risk assessment tool that utilizes advanced statistical modeling to quantify the financial implications of all potential risks. The correct answer is A. Establishing a comprehensive risk management framework that is demonstrably integrated with the organization's overall governance structure and strategic decision-making processes. Explanation: the core of transitioning to ISO 31000-2018 involves integrating risk management principles into an organization's overall governance and strategic objectives. The standard emphasizes that risk management is not a standalone activity, but a fundamental part of decision-making and governance. Therefore, a robust framework for risk management, as outlined in ISO 31000-2018, must be designed to be integral to the organization's structure, processes, and culture. This means establishing clear roles and responsibilities, ensuring accountability at all levels, and embedding risk considerations into strategic planning, operational activities, and performance monitoring. The framework should facilitate the consistent application of the risk management process across the organization, supporting the achievement of objectives by managing uncertainty. It is about creating an environment where risk is understood, discussed, and managed proactively, rather than reactively. This proactive integration is key to realizing the benefits of a well-established risk management system. Question 17. A multinational conglomerate, transitioning its risk management practices to align with ISO 31000-2018, is reviewing its internal reporting protocols. The organization has identified a significant divergence in how risk information is presented to its board of directors versus its operational unit managers. The board requires a high-level overview of strategic risks and their potential impact on organizational objectives, while operational managers need detailed information on specific process-level risks and the efficacy of implemented mitigation actions. Which reporting approach best exemplifies the principles of ISO 31000-2018 in this scenario? Option A. Creating a single, comprehensive risk register that is distributed to all stakeholders, irrespective of their specific informational needs or decision-making responsibilities. Option B. Developing distinct risk reports for the board and operational managers, with the board receiving a consolidated view of strategic risks and their financial implications, and operational managers receiving granular data on process risks, control effectiveness, and incident trends. Option C. Implementing a qualitative risk assessment matrix that is universally applied across all organizational levels, focusing solely on the likelihood and impact of identified risks without detailing control measures. Option D. Prioritizing the reporting of all identified risks to regulatory bodies as per compliance mandates, with internal reporting being a secondary consideration based on available resources. Correct answer is B. Developing distinct risk reports for the board and operational managers, with the board receiving a consolidated view of strategic risks and their financial implications, and operational managers receiving granular data on process risks, control effectiveness, and incident trends. Explanation. The transition to ISO 31000-2018 mandates a more integrated and consistent approach to risk management reporting. Clause 5.4.3, Communication and Consultation, and Clause 6.4.3, Reporting of the standard emphasize the need for relevant, accurate, and timely information to be communicated to stakeholders. Effective risk reporting within the framework of ISO 31000-2018 is not merely about listing identified risks. It's about providing actionable insights that support decision-making and the achievement of objectives. This involves tailoring the content and format of reports to the specific needs of different audiences, such as senior management, operational teams, or regulatory bodies. The reporting should clearly articulate the risk landscape, the effectiveness of controls, the residual risk exposure, and any emerging risks. It should also reflect the organization's risk appetite and tolerance. The primary purpose of risk reporting in the context of the standard is to inform and enable continuous improvement of the risk management framework and processes. Therefore, a report that focuses on the strategic alignment of risks with organizational objectives, supported by evidence of control effectiveness, and a clear indication of residual risk levels, best serves the overarching goals of the standard. The reporting mechanism should facilitate informed decision-making by providing a clear understanding of the risk context and its implications for achieving objectives. Question 18. During the transition to ISO 31000-2018, an organization is refining its risk assessment methodology. They are particularly focused on ensuring that the scales used to determine the likelihood and consequence of identified risks are both robust and consistently applied across different departments. What fundamental aspect of risk analysis does this focus address to ensure effective risk management in line with the standard's principles? Option A. Prioritizing the quantification of all risks using precise numerical probabilities and impact values, irrespective of data availability. Option B. Focusing exclusively on the financial impact of risks, neglecting other potential consequence categories. Option C. Establishing clear and contextually relevant criteria for likelihood and consequence scales to ensure comparability and informed decision-making. Option D. Implementing a purely qualitative approach to risk assessment, relying solely on expert judgment without defined scales. The correct answer is C. Establishing clear and contextually relevant criteria for likelihood and consequence scales to ensure comparability and informed decision-making. Explanation. The transition from earlier risk management frameworks to ISO 31000-2018 emphasizes a principles-based approach rather than a prescriptive one. When analyzing the likelihood and consequences of risks, the standard promotes a consistent and comparable basis for risk assessment. This involves defining clear criteria for both likelihood and consequence scales, ensuring that these scales are appropriate for the organization's context and objectives. For likelihood, it's about establishing a common understanding of how often an event might occur, ranging from rare to almost certain. For consequences, it involves defining the potential impact across various dimensions such as financial, reputational, operational, or safety, from negligible to catastrophic. The effectiveness of this analysis hinges on the quality of the input data and the expertise of those performing the assessment. ISO 31000-2018 stresses that the chosen scales and their definitions should be clearly documented and applied uniformly throughout the organization. This consistency is crucial for accurate risk evaluation and subsequent decision-making regarding risk treatment. The standard encourages a review of these criteria periodically to ensure their continued relevance and accuracy in reflecting the organization's evolving environment and risk appetite. The ultimate goal is to provide a robust and transparent foundation for comparing different risks and prioritizing mitigation efforts, thereby enhancing the overall effectiveness of the risk management process. Question 19. Consider an organization operating in a highly regulated sector, such as pharmaceuticals, where product safety and efficacy are paramount. To effectively establish risk criteria aligned with ISO 31000-2018, which of the following approaches would best integrate the organization's risk appetite and tolerance with the stringent requirements of external regulatory bodies and the overarching goal of patient safety? Option A. Define risk criteria by first quantifying the potential impact of noncompliance with specific regulations, then overlaying the organization's stated risk appetite for financial losses, and finally setting tolerance levels for deviations from expected product quality metrics based on historical data. Option B. Develop risk criteria by prioritizing the achievement of strategic business objectives, with regulatory compliance and patient safety being secondary considerations to be addressed only if they directly impede profit margins. Option C. Focus the establishment of risk criteria on the explicit wording of ISO 31000-2018, interpreting its principles in isolation from the organization's specific industry context, regulatory landscape, or defined risk appetite. Option D. Establish risk criteria solely based on the organization's historical incident data, focusing on minimizing the frequency of past occurrences without explicit consideration of regulatory mandates or defined risk appetite. The correct answer is A. Define risk criteria by first quantifying the potential impact of noncompliance with specific regulations, then overlaying the organization's stated risk appetite for financial losses, and finally setting tolerance levels for deviations from expected product quality metrics based on historical data. Explanation. Establishing risk criteria is a fundamental step in a risk management framework. As outlined in ISO 31000-2018, these criteria provide the basis for evaluating the significance of risk and for making decisions about risk treatment. They are not static and must be defined and communicated clearly within an organization. Risk appetite, which is the amount and type of risk that an organization is willing to pursue or retain, and risk tolerance, which is the degree of variation in achieving objectives that an organization is willing to accept, are key components of these criteria. The process involves considering the organization's objectives, context, and stakeholders' needs and expectations. For example, a financial institution might have a low risk appetite for operational failures, but a higher risk tolerance for market fluctuations within certain defined parameters. The criteria should be reviewed and updated as the organization's context, objectives, and stakeholder expectations change. This ensures that the risk management process remains relevant and effective in supporting the achievement of organizational goals and is aligned with regulatory requirements such as those related to financial stability or data privacy, which often dictate certain levels of acceptable risk. The selection of appropriate criteria directly influences the prioritization of risks and the subsequent allocation of resources for mitigation efforts. Question 20. A multinational logistics firm, Global Move, is transitioning to ISO 31000-2018. During their risk assessment for a new cross-border shipping route, the analysis team identified a potential disruption risk due to unforeseen geopolitical instability. The risk analysis indicated a moderate likelihood and a significant consequence, resulting in a calculated risk level of high. Global Moves established risk criteria, approved by their board, define high risks as those that could potentially cause a financial loss exceeding Euros 5 million or significantly disrupt operations for more than 2 weeks, necessitating immediate management intervention. The analysis also revealed that this specific geopolitical risk, if it materializes, could lead to a financial loss of approximately Euros 4.5 million and a disruption of up to 10 days. Considering the principles of ISO 31000-2018 for comparing risk analysis results with risk criteria, what is the most appropriate conclusion regarding this identified risk? Option A. The risk analysis is flawed, and a new assessment should be conducted, focusing solely on qualitative descriptors rather than quantitative impacts. Option B. The risk must be treated as high and immediately escalated for mandatory intervention, because the analysis classified it as high, irrespective of the specific quantitative outcomes. Option C. The risk criteria are too stringent and need to be revised downwards to accommodate the analyzed risk level of high before any further decisions are made. Option D. The risk level, while analyzed as high, does not meet the defined quantitative thresholds for financial loss or disruption duration, suggesting it may be within the organization's tolerance for now, but still warrants monitoring. Correct answer is D. The risk level, while analyzed as high, does not meet the defined quantitative thresholds for financial loss or disruption duration, suggesting it may be within the organization's tolerance for now, but still warrants monitoring. Explanation. The core of comparing risk analysis results with risk criteria, as emphasized in ISO 31000-2018, involves evaluating whether the identified and analyzed risks exceed or fall within the established tolerance levels. Risk criteria are the terms of reference against which the significance of a risk is evaluated. They are defined by the organization based on its objectives, legal and regulatory requirements, and other stakeholder expectations. When risk analysis is complete, the outputs, such as the level of risk, are compared against these predefined criteria. This comparison determines whether a risk is acceptable, requires treatment, or needs further scrutiny. For instance, if an organization has a risk criterion stating that any risk with a potential financial impact exceeding $100,000 requires mandatory treatment, and the analysis of a specific operational risk indicates a potential financial impact of $150,000, this risk would be deemed unacceptable and necessitate further action. The process is not about recalculating criteria, but about using them as a benchmark. The effectiveness of this comparison hinges on the clarity and relevance of the defined risk criteria and the accuracy of the risk analysis. It's a crucial step in the decision-making process for risk treatment and in assessing the overall effectiveness of the risk management framework. The comparison informs whether the organization's risk appetite and tolerance levels are being breached, thereby guiding subsequent risk management activities and strategic decisions. Question 21. Considering the evolution from ISO 31000-2009 to ISO 31000-2018, which fundamental aspect of risk management underwent the most significant re-emphasis to ensure its pervasive integration and effectiveness across all organizational activities and decision-making processes? Option A. The detailed procedural steps for risk identification, analysis, and evaluation, which were expanded with more granular guidance. Option B. The foundational principles of risk management, now presented as essential characteristics that guide the entire framework. Option C. The formal documentation of risk registers, mandating a standardized format and content for all recorded risks. Option D. The explicit requirement for a dedicated risk management department with specialized personnel to oversee all risk-related activities. Correct answer is B. The foundational principles of risk management, now presented as essential characteristics that guide the entire framework. Explanation. The transition from ISO 31000-2009 to ISO 31000-2018 involved a significant shift in emphasis, particularly concerning the integration of risk management into organizational governance and decision-making. While the 2009 version provided a foundational framework, The 2018 revision aimed for greater applicability across all types of organizations and a more explicit focus on the principles that underpin effective risk management. A key aspect of this transition was the redefinition and clarification of the core principles, which are now presented as essential characteristics of effective risk management. These principles are not merely guidelines, but fundamental enablers of achieving the organization's objectives. The 2018 standard emphasizes that risk management should be integrated, structured, customized, inclusive, dynamic, based on the best available information, consider human and cultural factors, and be subject to continual improvement. The focus on principles is crucial because they provide a robust foundation that guides the design and implementation of the entire risk management process, ensuring it is effective and tailored to the organization's context. The 2018 standard moves away from a prescriptive approach towards one that emphasizes the outcomes and the integration of risk management into all organizational activities. This means that the principles are not just a set of desirable attributes, but are foundational to the very concept of managing risk effectively within any entity. The shift to principles underscores the importance of a risk-aware culture and the proactive management of uncertainty. Question 22. Consider an organization that has recently undergone a significant strategic pivot, shifting its primary market focus and operational model. This transition, while promising growth, introduces a multitude of new uncertainties. To effectively navigate this period and ensure the successful realization of its new strategic direction, what fundamental benefits should the organization prioritize from the systematic application of risk management principles aligned with ISO 31000-2018? Option A. The complete elimination of all potential negative outcomes associated with the strategic shift. Option B. Strict adherence to all applicable regulatory reporting requirements during the transition phase. Option C. Enhanced assurance in achieving strategic objectives by proactively addressing emergent uncertainties. Option D. A reduction in the organization's overall insurance premiums due to a perceived lower risk profile. The correct answer is C. Enhanced assurance in achieving strategic objectives by proactively addressing emergent uncertainties. Explanation. The core purpose of transitioning to or enhancing a risk management framework, as guided by standards like ISO 31000-2018, is to proactively manage uncertainty and its potential impact on achieving objectives. This involves a systematic process of identifying, analyzing, evaluating, treating, monitoring, and communicating risks. The benefits extend beyond mere compliance or avoidance of negative events. It fosters informed decision-making by providing a clearer understanding of potential threats and opportunities. This leads to more efficient allocation of resources, as efforts can be focused on the most significant risks. Furthermore, a robust risk management system enhances organizational resilience, enabling it to better adapt to changing internal and external environments. It also supports the achievement of strategic objectives by integrating risk considerations into planning and performance management. This proactive approach builds confidence among stakeholders, including investors, regulators, and customers, by demonstrating a commitment to sound governance and responsible operations. The standard itself emphasizes that risk management is an integral part of organizational governance and leadership, not a standalone activity. It aims to create and protect value by improving the likelihood of achieving objectives. Question 23. When an international logistics firm, Global Freight Solutions, is transitioning to the ISO 31000-2018 risk management standard, what crucial internal contextual factor must be thoroughly analyzed to ensure the risk management framework effectively supports its strategic goal of expanding operations into emerging markets with varying regulatory environments? Option A. The company's established corporate social responsibility policies and their alignment with international labor standards. Option B. The current geopolitical stability assessments of the target emerging markets. Option C. The effectiveness of its internal communication channels for disseminating risk-related information across different departments. Option D. The organization's existing supplier contracts and the clauses related to force majeure events. The correct answer is D. The organization's existing supplier contracts and the clauses related to force majeure events. Explanation. The internal context of an organization, as defined by ISO 31000-2018, encompasses its objectives, strategies, organizational structure, governance, culture, information systems, contractual relationships, and stakeholders. Understanding these elements is crucial for establishing the scope and boundaries of the risk management framework. For instance, an organization's strategic objectives directly influence the types of risks it faces and the risk appetite it can adopt. Similarly, its organizational culture can either foster or hinder effective risk communication and treatment. The external context, on the other hand, relates to the environment in which the organization operates. This includes the social, cultural, political, legal, regulatory, economic, technological, and environmental factors. Compliance with specific regulations, such as data protection laws like GDPR or industry-specific mandates, forms a critical part of the external context. The interplay between these internal and external factors shapes the organization's risk landscape. Identifying and understanding these contextual elements allows for the development of a risk management approach that is relevant, proportionate, and aligned with the organization's overall purpose and direction. Question 24. Considering the evolution of international management system standards, particularly the adoption of the Annex SL framework by standards such as ISO 9001-2015 and ISO 14001-2015, how does the revised ISO 31000-2018 guidance on risk management principles and implementation best complement and integrate with these Annex SL-based systems? Option A. By focusing solely on financial risk assessment, thereby creating a distinct separation from the operational and strategic risks addressed by Annex SL standards. Option B. By acting as a standalone, independent standard that should be implemented separately from any other management system to avoid dilution of its core risk management focus. Option C. By offering specific, detailed procedural requirements that must be mapped directly to the common clauses of Annex SL, ensuring a one-to-one compliance correlation. Option D. By providing overarching principles and a flexible framework that enhances the risk-based thinking inherent in Annex SL structures, facilitating consistent application across diverse management systems. Correct answer is D. By providing overarching principles and a flexible framework that enhances the risk-based thinking inherent in Annex SL structures, facilitating consistent application across diverse management systems. Explanation. The transition from an older version of ISO 31000, the 2018 revision, necessitates a review of how the updated standard interacts with other established management system standards and frameworks. ISO 31000, 2018 emphasizes the integration of risk management into an organization's governance and overall strategic objectives. When considering its relationship with other standards, particularly those that adopt the Annex SL structure, like ISO 9001-2015 for quality management or ISO 14001-2015 for environmental management, the alignment is significant. Annex SL provides a common framework, clause numbering, and terminology, which facilitates the integration of various management systems. ISO 31000, 2018, while not a certifiable standard itself, provides principles and guidelines that can be embedded within these Annex SL-based systems to enhance their risk-based thinking. The 2018 revision strengthened the emphasis on leadership commitment, integration into organizational processes, and the dynamic nature of risk. Therefore, its relationship with Annex SL compliance standards is one of providing foundational principles and a robust methodology that supports the risk-based approach inherent in those standards. Other frameworks, such as COSO-IRM, share common objectives with ISO 31000, 2018 in managing uncertainty and achieving objectives. But ISO 31000, 2018 is specifically designed as a universal guideline applicable across all types and sizes of organizations, and its principles are intended to be adaptable to any management system. The core of the transition is about embedding risk management more deeply and consistently, making it a fundamental part of decision-making at all levels, which aligns with the common clauses found in Annex SL. Question 25. A multinational corporation, Global Tech Innovations, is preparing for the implementation of a new, stringent environmental compliance directive issued by the International Standards Organization, ISO, concerning waste reduction in manufacturing. To ensure a robust and compliant risk management framework, global tech needs to effectively integrate the perspectives of various internal and external parties. Which of the following approaches best exemplifies the principle of appropriate and timely stakeholder involvement as outlined in the transition to ISO 31000-2018 for this scenario? Option A. Engaging external environmental consultants to analyze the directive and propose mitigation strategies, with their report being circulated to department heads only after the initial risk treatment plans have been drafted. Option B. Establishing a cross-functional task force with representatives from production, R&D, legal, and environmental health and safety, who will conduct initial risk assessments and present findings to senior management for review before the directive's effective date. Option C. Informing all employees via a company-wide email about the new directive and its potential impact, with a designated contact person for any immediate queries. Option D. Waiting until the directive's compliance deadline has passed to solicit feedback from operational staff on any unforeseen challenges encountered during implementation. The correct answer is B. Establishing a cross-functional task force with representatives from production, R&D, legal, and environmental health and safety, who will conduct initial risk assessments and present findings to senior management for review before the directive's effective date. Explanation. The transition to ISO 31000-2018 emphasizes a more integrated and principles-based approach to risk management. Core tenet of this standard, particularly in relation to stakeholder engagement, is ensuring that the involvement is both appropriate and timely. This allows for the incorporation of diverse knowledge, perspectives, and perceptions into the risk management process. When considering a new regulatory framework, such as the proposed data privacy legislation in the fictional nation of Veridia, an organization must actively seek input from all relevant parties. This includes internal departments like IT and legal, as well as external entities such as customers, suppliers, and regulatory bodies. The goal is to build a comprehensive understanding of potential risks and opportunities associated with the new legislation, ensuring that the organization's risk management framework is robust and aligned with external expectations. Failure to involve key stakeholders early and effectively can lead to misinterpretations of the regulatory impact, missed risk mitigation opportunities, and ultimately, noncompliance. Therefore, a proactive and inclusive approach to stakeholder engagement is paramount for successful adaptation to evolving regulatory landscapes and for embedding risk management into the organization's culture and strategic decision-making. The appropriate timing ensures that feedback can genuinely influence the risk assessment and treatment strategies before decisions are finalized. Question 26. When transitioning to ISO 31000-2018, an organization's risk management committee is developing its strategy for engaging with external regulatory bodies regarding new environmental compliance requirements. The committee aims to ensure that the feedback from these bodies is effectively integrated into the organization's risk assessment and treatment processes. Which of the following best describes the core principle of communication and consultation as defined by ISO 31000-2018 in this context? Option A. Providing formal reports to regulatory bodies at predetermined intervals, detailing the organization's risk mitigation efforts and compliance status. Option B. Establishing a dedicated liaison officer to act as a single point of contact for all communications with external regulatory entities, primarily for information dissemination. Option C. Facilitating a continuous, bidirectional exchange of information and views with regulatory bodies to ensure risk management decisions are informed and stakeholders' perspectives are considered throughout the process. Option D. Conducting periodic workshops with regulatory agencies to present the organization's risk management framework and solicit general feedback on its structure. The correct answer is C. Facilitating a continuous bidirectional exchange of information and views with regulatory bodies to ensure risk management decisions are informed and stakeholders' perspectives are considered throughout the process. Explanation. ISO 31000-2018 emphasizes that communication and consultation are integral and iterative processes that occur throughout the entire risk management framework and its application. They are not isolated activities, but are continuous bidirectional interactions with stakeholders. The purpose is to provide, share, or obtain information and engage in dialogue. This dialogue is crucial for understanding risks from different perspectives, ensuring that risk management decisions are informed and accepted, and fostering a risk-aware culture. Effective communication ensures that all relevant parties are aware of risks, the risk management process, and the outcomes. Consultation involves seeking input and feedback from stakeholders, which helps in identifying risks, assessing their significance, and developing appropriate treatment strategies. This two-way exchange of information and views is vital for the successful integration and effectiveness of risk management within an organization, aligning with the standards principle of facilitating informed decision-making and continuous improvement by engaging with relevant internal and external parties. The transition to ISO 31000-2018 reinforces the need for a more integrated and proactive approach to these activities, ensuring that they are embedded within the organization's culture and operations, rather than being a separate, perfunctory exercise. Question 27. Consider a multinational technology firm, Innovate Solutions, which is undergoing a transition to align its risk management practices with ISO 31000-2018. The firm has established a robust system for collecting data on the performance of its implemented risk treatments, including metrics on the effectiveness of cybersecurity controls, the success rate of new product launch risk mitigation strategies, and the financial impact of supply chain disruptions. The primary objective of this data collection and analysis is to provide actionable insights for enhancing the organization's risk management framework and its overall resilience. Which of the following approaches to analyzing this risk performance data would most effectively support the firm's transition and ongoing improvement efforts according to the principles of ISO 31000-2018? Option A. Analyzing the data to identify trends in risk treatment effectiveness and linking these trends to the achievement of strategic objectives and the review of risk appetite, thereby informing adjustments to the risk management framework. Option B. Conducting a retrospective analysis of past risk incidents to identify common root causes, without correlating this information with the performance of current risk treatments or strategic goals. Option C. Aggregating all collected data into a single dashboard report to present to senior management, focusing solely on the number of identified risks and the status of their treatments without further contextual analysis. Option D. Prioritizing the analysis of data related to regulatory compliance risks, as this is mandated by specific industry laws, and giving secondary consideration to data impacting strategic objectives or operational efficiency. The correct answer is A. Analyzing the data to identify trends in risk treatment effectiveness and linking these trends to the achievement of strategic objectives and the review of risk appetite, thereby informing adjustments to the risk management framework. Explanation. The transition to ISO 31000-2018 emphasizes a more integrated and principle-based approach to risk management, shifting from a prescriptive process to one focused on creating and protecting value. When collecting and analyzing data on risk performance, organizations must ensure the data is relevant, reliable, and contributes to informed decision-making and continuous improvement of the risk management framework. The standard stresses that the effectiveness of risk management should be evaluated. This evaluation requires data that reflects the actual outcomes of risk treatments, the efficiency of risk management processes, and the overall impact on achieving objectives. Therefore, focusing on the alignment of risk management activities with the organization's strategic objectives and ensuring that performance data directly informs the review and improvement of the risk management framework is paramount. This includes understanding how risk appetite and tolerance are being managed and whether the implemented controls are performing as expected. The analysis should also consider the quality of the data itself, its sources, and the methods used for collection and interpretation. The ultimate goal is to provide insights that enable better risk decisions and enhance organizational resilience and performance. Question 28. Consider a multinational technology firm that has recently updated its risk management framework to align with ISO 31000-2018. During the implementation phase, the internal audit team identified that while the new documentation clearly outlines risk appetite statements and control effectiveness metrics, employee engagement in risk reporting remains low, particularly in departments with historically hierarchical structures and a perceived lack of accountability for risk-related failures. Which of the following best reflects the core challenge in transitioning to the ISO 31000-2018 standard concerning human and cultural factors in this scenario? Option A. the insufficient allocation of financial resources to implement new risk management software solutions across all departments. Option B, the framework's reliance on top-down directives without sufficient consideration for bottom-up feedback mechanisms that foster a culture of psychological safety. Option C, the failure to conduct comprehensive risk identification workshops that include all levels of the organization's workforce. Option D, the absence of a dedicated risk management committee responsible for overseeing the transition process and ensuring compliance. The correct answer is B, the framework's reliance on top-down directives without sufficient consideration for bottom-up feedback mechanisms that foster a culture of psychological safety. Explanation: the transition to ISO 31000-2018 emphasizes a more integrated approach to risk management, acknowledging that human and cultural factors are intrinsic to its effectiveness. This standard moves beyond a purely mechanistic view of risk management by recognizing that organizational culture, individual behaviors, and cognitive biases significantly influence how risks are perceived, assessed, treated, and communicated. For instance, a culture that discourages open reporting of near misses or prioritizes short-term gains over long-term risk mitigation will inherently undermine even the most robust risk management framework. Similarly, ingrained assumptions or a lack of psychological safety can lead to flawed decision-making during risk assessment. Standards principles such as integration, structured and comprehensive, customized and relevant, inclusive, dynamic, best available information, human and cultural factors, and continual improvement all point toward the necessity of understanding and managing these human elements. Acknowledging these factors means designing processes and communication strategies that account for how people actually behave and interact within the organizational context, rather than assuming purely rational actors. This leads to more realistic and effective risk management outcomes. Question 29. When evaluating the effectiveness of a risk management framework, transition to align with ISO 31000-2018 principles. Which specific aspect of the monitoring and review process is most critical for demonstrating continuous improvement and the framework's sustained relevance to organizational objectives? Option A, verifying the completeness of risk registers and the consistent application of documented risk assessment methodologies across all departments. Option B, confirming that all identified risks have assigned owners and that their mitigation plans are documented and regularly updated. Option C, assessing the framework's alignment with the organization's evolving strategic objectives and its contribution to achieving those objectives. Option D, quantifying the reduction in the number of reported risk incidents compared to the previous reporting period. The correct answer is C, assessing the framework's alignment with the organization's evolving strategic objectives and its contribution to achieving those objectives. Explanation: the core of effective risk management framework monitoring and review, as emphasized in ISO 31000-2018, lies in ensuring its continued suitability, adequacy, and effectiveness in achieving the organization's objectives. This involves a systematic and ongoing process of assessment. Organizations must not only check if the framework is being implemented as designed, but also if it is delivering the intended outcomes and remaining relevant in the face of internal and external changes. This includes evaluating the integration of risk management into the organization's governance, strategy, and operations. Furthermore, the review process should consider the evolving risk landscape, the effectiveness of risk treatments, and the overall performance of the risk management system. The transition to ISO 31000-2018, with its strengthened emphasis on leadership commitment and integration, necessitates a review that assesses how well the framework supports these principles and contributes to the achievement of strategic goals, rather than merely checking compliance with procedural elements. The focus is on the framework's ability to foster a risk-aware culture and enable informed decision-making. Question 30. Consider a scenario where an international conglomerate, following the transition to ISO 31000-2018, conducted a post-implementation review of its supply chain risk management framework. The review identified that, while the initial risk assessments were comprehensive, the subsequent monitoring of supplier compliance with newly implemented ethical sourcing policies had been inconsistent, leading to several minor disruptions. Which of the following actions would most directly contribute to the continual improvement of the organization's risk management process as per the principles of ISO 31000-2018, specifically addressing the identified gap in monitoring effectiveness. Option A. Conducting a one-time training session for the procurement team on the importance of supply chain ethics, with no follow-up or integration into performance metrics. Option B. Establishing a formal feedback mechanism for supply chain partners to report on policy adherence and integrating this data into the risk register for regular review. Option C. Developing a new, more complex risk appetite statement without updating the existing risk treatment plans. Option D. Increasing the frequency of internal audits solely focused on financial controls within the supply chain department. Correct answer is B. Establishing a formal feedback mechanism for supply chain partners to report on policy adherence and integrating this data into the risk register for regular review. Explanation. The ISO 31000-2018 standard emphasizes that risk management is a dynamic process that requires continual improvement. This improvement is driven by learning from experience, reviewing the effectiveness of controls, and adapting to changes in the internal and external context. The standard posits that a robust risk management framework and process are not static, they evolve. This evolution is facilitated through mechanisms such as post-event reviews, audits, feedback loops, and performance monitoring. When an organization experiences an incident or a near miss, the subsequent analysis should not only focus on the immediate cause and consequence, but also on identifying systemic weaknesses in the risk management approach. This includes evaluating the adequacy of risk identification, assessment, treatment, and monitoring activities. The insights gained from such reviews are crucial for refining existing processes, developing new risk mitigation strategies, and enhancing the overall maturity of the risk management system. This iterative cycle of planning, implementing, checking, and acting, often referred to as the PDCA, Plan, Do, Check, Act cycle, is fundamental to achieving continual improvement in risk management as outlined in ISO 31000-2018. The objective is to make the risk management system more effective, efficient, and aligned with the organization's evolving objectives and risk appetite.